All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I do want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shah Bahashim Bakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. All right, that rule well and teach well, and shalom to the hopeful elect. All right, the Akim and Aqua scattered around the four corners of the planet Earth. All right, I'm the brother Iraq from GMS Dallas, and I wanted to do a quick lesson through the Spirit, man. Um, it was on my spirit to go into this. Um, so I have a couple precepts. I have a passage that I want to read from 1 Samuel 17, but then I have a couple precepts. So this is going to be a quick lesson through the Spirit. This is off the backs of something that the priest Osman Waf down here in Dallas, a point that he had made at camp. And basically he asked the question, or I can't remember if he asked the question or he just made the statement. You know, when you come into this thing, you have to believe that you're a winner. You know, so the question that I entitled the lesson is, do you believe that you are a winner? You know, do you believe that you're a winner? And it's a mindset thing. It's a faith. You know, this is a faith lesson. Um, because we know, we're at the doors of Jacob's trouble. We know, Esau's getting ready to come down with great wrath, and we get all that. Um, you know, like it says in Acts 14, through much tribulation shall we enter into the kingdom. All right, so we see what's in front of us, but really this is going to boil down to, for one, faith in Yahweh Shah. All right, and the resurrection. Okay, the ability to conquer death through Yahweh Shah. But it's also going to come down to if you believe you're a winner. You know what I'm saying? Through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah, of course. Not through your own volition, not through your own preparations or anything like that. That comes into play, right? The scriptures do say faith and works. All right, so we believe and then we act upon that belief. You know what I'm saying? In our respective lots, but it's all through Yahweh Shah, all through Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah. I'm gonna start here. This is a precept that I bring out a lot, I feel like, but I can't help it. This is Sirach chapter 27 and verse 5. It says, "The furnace proveth the potter's vessels." All right, the furnace represents what? Fire. Okay, trials, tribulations. Sirach, the second chapter is a good chapter on that. First Peter, the fourth chapter as well, is another good one. But it says, "The furnace proveth the potter's vessel." All right, potter's vessels, plural. All right, and who's the potter? The potter is Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah. All right, the Heavenly Father, but also Yahweh Shah, because the scriptures liken Yahweh Shah unto the everlasting Father when you read Isaiah the 9th chapter. All right, they're the ones that created us. They're the ones who made us to be, who we are. And you got to think, if you are a prince of the power, all right, if you're a prince of the power, if you are a Israelite, especially of the elect, then that means that you are a winner, because Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai is a winner. All right, he's the creator of all things. Okay, so Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai is the potter, and we are the vessels. And through this captivity, through Jacob's trouble, through the things that he has outlined for us, all right, we are going to be made into the vessels ultimately that he wants us to be, and that'll be completed when we're changed. Okay, but the change, when we're physically changed, 1 Corinthians 15, but that the spiritual transformation is happening now, right now. All right. So it says, Sirach 27 and 5, it says, "The furnace proveth the potter's vessels, so the trial of a man is in his reasoning." Okay. And I'm just going to read a basic definition of the word reasoning. All right, bear with me. It says reasoning. It says the action of thinking about something in a logical or sensible way. All right. And that's where faith comes in. That's where faith comes in, because if you try to analyze the situation that we're in on a carnal level, on a logical level, there it looks like it's an unwinnable situation. That's why we have to look at things spiritually, and through the lens of faith, right? Hebrews 11:1. All right, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. All right, we have evidence through the Spirit that we are in fact going to get the victory, and that evidence primarily is Yahushua. Yahushua being resurrected. Okay, let me see if there's any other definitions that are okay. It says that's pretty good. That's pretty good on that. Let me read this real quick. I want to get this in First Samuel. All right, First Samuel 17, and this is the account of David and Goliath. All right, which is a literal account. You know what I'm saying? The actual historical account that we can tap into in these times today, because we're in a David and Goliath type scenario right now. You know, and when you read the previous chapter is where Samuel anoints David. And when you read the chapter, David is essentially the least of all his brethren. He's the underdog. Okay, he's the underdog. All right, but through the Spirit and power of the Lord, he was anointed to be, the king that he was. All right, a man after the Most High's own heart, as the scriptures say, roughly paraphrasing. Okay, but I'm gonna read a little bit of this, probably like 5 verses. But this is in 1 Samuel 17:20. It says David accepts the challenge. All right, and that's the first step. That's the first step. When you come into the truth, essentially what you're doing is you're accepting a challenge. Okay, and a matter of fact, let me get a precept real quick. Let me get something real quick. Go with that. Because this truth is a challenge. This truth is the challenge. It's the battle. It's the war that must be won. Right, for the elect. All of our past lives, all of our past incarnations, our current situation, it was all a build up to this fight that we're fighting right now. And it is a heavy thing. It is a heavy thing. It's not something that you should take lightly by any stretch of the imagination. Let me see, man, real quick, Salakia. I know it's in Luke. I want to say Luke 14. Yep. This is Luke 14:28. Right. And I might need to read up just a little bit. This is Luke 14:28. It says, and if verse 27, well, no, the thought starts at verse 28. It says, but don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost, or without calculating the cost to see if there is enough money to finish it? Okay, now let me read this in the KJV. That was in the NLT. All right. This is Luke 14:28. It says, for which of you intending to build a tower sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? Okay, so before you accept the challenge of this truth of basically pursuing immortality, right, through Yahushua, because that's what we're doing, you have to count the cost, and it's going to cost you everything. Right, we know that the truth is going to cost us everything. Okay, Romans 12. Offer thy body a living sacrifice. All right, and that's what David did when you read 1 Samuel 17. He accepted the challenge and he knew the cost. But he wasn't worried about the cost. David believed that he was a winner. And that's the point of the lesson. This is 1 Samuel 17 and verse 20. It says, and David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went, as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philippines had put the battle in array, army against army, right? So this is real deal, stakes on the line. We're talking about a war between, two nations, right? We're talking about lives on the line. You know what I'm saying? We ain't talking about just, some everyday decision making. We're talking about stakes, high stakes. Okay. And this is the mindset. This is the way that David moved. And this is what the Lord has risen up the house of David in these times, which means what? It means that we're coming into this. This is the legacy that we're coming into. Um, this is the spirit of the elect in these times today. You know, 1 Samuel 17:22, it says, and David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper, of the carriage, and ran into the army and came and saluted his brethren. Okay. It says, and as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion of Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words. And David heard them, right? Because basically he declared a challenge. He declared a challenge. Okay. Verse 24, it says, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. Okay. It says, and the men of Israel said, have you seen this man that has come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. Right? These are Israelites. All right. And this is another example. This is another good point that this thing isn't just about being an Israelite. This thing is a lot bigger than knowing you're an Israelite. This thing is about faith. This thing is about faith in Yahweh Hashem Yahushua and believing in yourself. All right. That's another thing that the elders have been pushing, believing in yourself. All right. It says, and the men of Israel said, have you seen this man that has come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. It says, and David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and that taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? All right, so David was a winner, man. David, and he was representing Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. He wasn't worried about how swole, Goliath was. He wasn't worried about how big Goliath was. He wasn't even worried about weapons. Like when you read the account, we know we killed him with the slingshot, right, in the stone, right, which represents Yahushua, right? David was operating on a whole nother mindset of winning, man. And it wasn't through himself either. It was through the power in which he represented. Okay. And I'm not going to read the whole account on that. I just wanted to read a little bit of that. All right. Let me see if I can find this real quick. I'm going to get a couple more precepts and I'm going to close out. This is Jeremiah chapter 9 and verse 24. It says, but let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me. Okay. So our glory comes from understanding and knowing Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, where our power lies. That's why we go into prophecy so much, because prophecy is one of the heaviest signs of, the Lord's power. The ability to basically orchestrate events on the planet Earth. Like when during the time of Egypt, when Moses and Aaron were working those miracles, and Pharaoh and his warlocks were working miracles. Okay, but guess what? Our power is the one who orchestrated that whole scenario in the first place. So it's not even close. The power comparison, the resume, the stats, they don't line up. Okay, so let me finish this out. Jeremiah 9:24. It says, "But let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me, that I am the Lord, which exercise loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight, saith the Lord." Okay, and I'm gonna finish with this. All right, because these are precepts that we're going to have ingrained into our being. You know what I'm saying? To get through this time, uh, that's called Jacob's trouble. It's gonna have to be. We're gonna have to walk this out. We're gonna have to, and it's without hesitation. You know, this is 2 Corinthians 2:14. It says, "Now thanks be unto Yahweh Shema Shah, which always causeth us to triumph in Hamashiach, and maketh manifest the savor of his knowledge by us in every place." All right. And it says, which always causes us to triumph. Okay. So the point is, or the question is, do you believe or you're a winner? You know, do you believe that Yahweh Shem Shah called you to lose? Or do you believe that he called you to win? Okay. So that's all I got. Lord's willing, brothers got something out of it. That I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Shem Shah. Shalom.